The story takes place in a modern world where dungeons, monsters, and special abilities exist. Our protagonist, Ju Dong-hoon, possesses the rare authority of necromancy, but there is one cruel limitation: he can only summon weak E-rank skeletons. Everything changes when he unlocks a hidden achievement that allows his skeletons to evolve. This is the story of the weakest necromancer rising toward the top. The story begins inside an E-rank dungeon, where a small group of hunters is surrounded by goblins. Despite being heavily outnumbered, their leader remains calm while giving orders. Standing quietly behind them is Ju Dong-hoon, hiding beneath his hood. When the hunters can no longer hold their ground, the leader asks the necromancer for help. Dong-hoon raises his skull-shaped staff, which glows with purple energy as 10 skeletons rise from the ground. The battle immediately shifts in the hunters' favor. The others are shocked to see a necromancer in such a low-ranked dungeon. Since necromancers are known to be among the strongest authority users, they assume Dong-hoon must be incredibly powerful. Hearing their praise only makes him smile bitterly. Out of billions of people, only around 1,000 possess the rare authority of necromancy. However, unlike every other necromancer, Dong-hoon is cursed to summon only E-rank skeletons. While other necromancers command terrifying undead armies, his summons are the weakest possible. 10 years earlier, humanity began awakening unique authorities upon turning 20. Some gained crafting abilities, while others received combat or support powers. These abilities allowed humanity to survive against monsters and dungeons. Although Dong-hoon awakened as the rare necromancer everyone admired, his growth stopped immediately because of his weak summons. Since then, he has been stuck clearing E-rank dungeons as a mercenary. After finishing the mission, Dong-hoon collects his reward and leaves. Looking at his small paycheck, he sighs. Sometimes he wishes he had awakened an ordinary production skill instead. Even part-time workers earn more than he does, yet he refuses to give up on becoming a hunter. As he walks through the city, a news report announces that the famous hunter known as the Dark Lord has reached A rank in only 3 years, setting a new record. The news frustrates Dong-hoon because the Dark Lord awakened his necromancer authority on the very same day. While one became a legendary hunter, Dong-hoon remains trapped as the weakest necromancer. Trying to clear his mind, he heads to his usual training spot and summons his skeletons. Since they always return after being summoned, he has even given them simple names based on their weapons, like Bony 1 with a greatsword, Bony 2 with a spear, and Bony 3 with a bow. Every day he makes them train, hoping they will eventually grow stronger. His efforts did produce some results at first, allowing the skeletons to defeat 3 goblins at once. However, they never improved beyond that point. No matter how hard they trained, their strength refused to increase, leaving Dong-hoon frustrated once again. While complaining about his terrible luck, he suddenly hears a growl behind him. Turning around, he freezes as a massive orc approaches. The monster's overwhelming presence weakens all of his skeletons, reducing their combat abilities. Realizing an orc should never appear here, Dong-hoon immediately understands that a nearby dungeon break must have occurred. The orc swings its huge weapon, and Dong-hoon orders his skeletons to block the attack. They are effortlessly smashed aside and disappear. The orc then charges straight toward him. Determined to survive, Dong-hoon keeps summoning skeletons while retreating. An arrow briefly distracts the monster, giving him enough time to form another line of defense. Even though he still has enough energy to summon several more skeletons, every single one is easily defeated. Soon, all of his energy is exhausted, yet the orc remains completely unharmed. With only 3 skeletons left standing, Dong-hoon believes this is the end. At that exact moment, a brilliant golden notification suddenly appears before him. Out of instinct, he checks the message and discovers he has unlocked the hidden achievement called the 10,000 use rule. As a reward, he is promoted to a dank necromancer. His exhausted energy is instantly restored, and all of his skeletons evolve into stronger versions. Without wasting another second, Dong-hoon summons his upgraded army. Alongside his sword, spear, and archer skeletons, new allies appear, including a heavily armored tank and a powerful mage. For the first time, his undead army has a balanced formation capable of fighting powerful enemies. The battle changes instantly. His evolved skeletons force the orc backward, eventually knocking its weapon from its hands. Finally, the skeleton mage gathers a massive fireball and launches it straight at the helpless monster, defeating it in a single explosive attack. As the victorious skeletons turn toward their master, Dong-hoon stands speechless. After years of disappointment and endless struggle, the hidden achievement has finally broken the curse holding him back. For the first time in his life, he feels that fate has given him a real chance, and his journey to becoming a truly powerful necromancer has finally begun. Dong-hoon sat at his small table, slurping a bowl of hot ramen. As he ate, he kept his eyes fixed on his glowing status screen. He never really expected his skills to improve this fast. For a long time, he felt stuck. Now, he finally saw proof that his hard work was paying off. He wasn't sure when he would officially reach C rank, but he was satisfied for now. He knew he needed to stay humble and stick to the basics. The power of his intermediate skeleton was already very impressive. It made him daydream about the future. He imagined Bony 5 casting massive blizzard storms. He saw Bony 1 and Bony 2 becoming legendary masters of the sword and spear. The thought made him smile. He felt truly ready for whatever came next. When Dong-hoon arrived at work, the mood felt heavy. Something was definitely wrong. He noticed a man wearing a green badge. That meant the man was a C-rank hunter, a high-level professional. Soon, his boss called him into the office to share some big news. The boss talked about a new guild called the Giparing Guild. Everyone in Korea knew that name. It was started by a famous top-tier ranker named Jae-pang, also known as the Fine Bow. The guild was planning to explore a brand new dungeon that had just appeared. They needed porters to carry their gear. The offer was incredible. The pay was 10 times higher than a normal job. They were even willing to hire E-rank hunters like Dong-hoon. Dong-hoon didn't say yes right away. He wanted to know more about the dungeon first. The leader explained that the dungeon was near a place called Padu. It was a very difficult site. 5 amateur teams had already tried to clear it and failed. Its official rank was still a mystery. However, the boss insisted it would be safe because a superstar like Jae-pang was leading the way. Dong-hoon wouldn't have to fight at all. He would just be a porter. Dong-hoon thought hard about the offer. 10 times the pay usually meant the job was very dangerous. He was still mentally tired from a scary fight with an orc the day before. But then, he remembered something. He once saw an interview with a famous hunter called the Dark Lord. The expert said that the best way to level up fast is to enter dungeons that are higher than your own rank. This convinced him. Dong-hoon accepted the job. The expedition was set for 1 week later. He asked for the week off so he could prepare. His boss agreed and even offered to buy him a nice dinner soon. Once he was back home, Dong-hoon summoned his skeletons. He felt a deep sense of pride. His training was working. If his skeletons kept growing like this, he might even become an A-rank hunter one day. He started a new training session to test their power. He was shocked by the results. Even though his skeletons were technically D rank, they fought like C ranks. They were much stronger than he expected. However, there was a problem. His skeletons were now too strong for his old equipment. They smashed the wooden training scarecrows into pieces. He realized he would have to spend a lot of money on better gear. He also had a personal worry. His skeletons were strong, but he was still a weak human. If a monster managed to run past his skeletons, he would be in huge trouble. He needed to find a way to protect himself. Suddenly, his mage skeleton walked over to him. It pointed its wooden staff at Dong-hoon and cast a soft spell. It felt as if the skeleton could read his mind. The skeleton even nodded its head to comfort him. This was a huge discovery. In the past, the skeletons only followed simple orders. Now, they were starting to show their own personalities and opinions. Then, the tank skeleton walked up. It pointed toward the broken training gear. Dong-hoon looked at the skeleton, feeling confused. He knew his undead friends were trying to tell him something important, but he wasn't quite sure what it was yet. Dong-hoon watched his shield skeleton fight. It was stronger than all the others. With the Bone Knight helping, Dong-hoon realized he didn't need to buy expensive new equipment. To test his progress, Dong-hoon asked a skeleton named Bony 2 to attack him. He wanted to check his new air shield. Bony 2 struck him hard, but Dong-hoon wasn't hurt at all. He was very happy with the result and told the skeletons to keep training. Soon, a notification appeared. The skeletons were getting stronger. For the first time, Dong-hoon could see a status window for each skeleton individually. He noticed that Bony 1, Bony 2, and Bony 3 had better stats because of their hard work. Dong-hoon felt proud. His efforts were paying off. He decided to train them until they became the strongest skeletons in the world. Later, Dong-hoon went to a train station for a new job. He was working as a porter. He carried a heavy bag filled with a sleeping bag and emergency food. He joined a group of mercenaries waiting near a dungeon entrance. The dungeon was close to the station. A strange, dim energy hovered around it. It looked like a normal dungeon, but the hunters were nervous. They knew this one was very difficult. Many felt safe because a famous guild was leading them, but Dong-hoon didn't trust that. He knew many hunters vanished in dungeons, even when they were with big guilds. Famous hunters got all the glory, while lower-rank hunters were often forgotten. Still, Dong-hoon was willing to risk his life. While he was waiting, he heard a voice behind him. The person mentioned that he seemed like a D-rank hunter, even though his ID tag said he was only E-rank. Dong-hoon looked around, but the area was empty. He called out, asking who was there. A girl finally stepped out of the shadows. She questioned why he was hiding his true strength to work as a lowly porter. Dong-hoon was confused. He told her it didn't matter if he was D-rank or E-rank, because the guild was full of elite A-rank hunters. The girl didn't believe him. She thought he was a spy or an actor. Dong-hoon looked at her and saw she had a golden plate. This meant she was at least a C-rank hunter. Then he realized who she was. She was Gi Soyeol, known as the Dark Empress. She was one of the top hunters in South Korea and the sister of a powerful guild leader. Dong-hoon started to shake. She was a famous assassin, and people were terrified of making her angry. He was also a huge fan of hers. He tried to explain that he wasn't a spy and was just a normal guy. Suddenly, the girl started laughing. She told him she was just joking. Dong-hoon was shocked. He couldn't understand why a world-class hunter would play a prank on a total stranger like him. Dong-hoon felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. He wondered if Soy had performed a secret background check on him. Lately, he had been training his skeletons like a madman. Usually, that kind of intense activity would catch the eye of high-ranking hunters, which could be dangerous. However, having a ranker take an interest in you could also be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Soy looked at him and smiled brightly. She asked if he was flustered by her sudden approach. She quickly apologized for being rude, but her curiosity had gotten the better of her. She admitted that she found him fascinating. Dong-hoon wore an E-rank badge, the lowest level possible. Yet, she could sense that he had the skill to house 5 units of dark energy inside his body. Dong-hoon remained silent. There was nothing he could say because she was exactly right. He realized she had used a high-level energy detection skill to see his true strength. Soy then explained why she was talking to him. Her older brother had asked her to scout for a new expedition team. She needed a reliable porter, and she had just found a very suspicious one standing right in front of her. She asked Dong-hoon if he would volunteer for the scouting mission. She noted that he was the most capable porter she had ever seen. She also sensed that he wasn't the type of person to get scared and run away when things got tough. Dong-hoon started to sweat. He wasn't sure if he wanted to be in the spotlight. However, Soy promised to double his reward. For a protagonist who was completely broke, that was an offer he simply could not refuse. In this world, dungeons are ranked from E to S based on their difficulty. Interestingly, these ranks are not assigned by the system. Instead, humans have to judge the danger levels themselves. Even the famous S-ranker, White Shadow, says there is no perfect way to know a dungeon's rank without going inside first. Some people try to guess by looking at the color of the dungeon's entrance. They believe that a darker color means a higher level of danger, but this method is often wrong. Because of this uncertainty, the Hunter Association created a standard. If a dungeon cannot be cleared by 5 or more hunters of a certain rank, the dungeon's rank is increased. For example, if 5 A-rank hunters fail to clear a cave, it becomes an official S-rank dungeon. This method is grim because it often requires someone to get hurt or sacrifice their life just to prove how dangerous a place is. The dungeon Dong-hoon was about to enter was one of these unranked mysteries. The association didn't want to risk their main powerhouses immediately, so they sent a scouting team first. Because of his new job, Dong-hoon got to experience the dungeon's atmosphere much sooner than other mercenaries. When he stepped inside, the first thing he saw was a massive cave. It was filled with glowing pearls that lit up the darkness. One of his teammates immediately suggested stealing the pearls to sell them for a high price. Luckily, another hunter warned him to stay back. They told him not to touch anything recklessly in an unknown environment. Most of the team felt very relaxed. Every member had an A-rank badge, and Soy was an S-ranker. They felt invincible. Soy ordered everyone to stay alert and look around. She assigned a guide named Kang Sunwook to watch over the porter. Sunwook was famous for his skills. The system had even given him the official title of guide because he was so good at finding exits and navigating traps. As the main group moved away, Sunwook asked Dong-hoon if he was nervous. Dong-hoon admitted that he was. Sunwook nodded and told him to keep that edge. He explained that this dungeon felt wrong. It was far too quiet. Usually, in a cave this size, you would hear the sounds of monsters or feel the vibrations of something moving. Here, there was only silence. Sunwook suspected there was a hidden gimmick or a secret trap. Dong-hoon was impressed by the guide's instincts. Sunwook bragged that he had been in this business for many years. However, as they walked further, even Sunwook began to feel uneasy. He said his body felt heavy and his skin was crawling. Dong-hoon felt the same chills running down his spine. He asked if they should really keep going. Sunwook hesitated. He had never felt a presence this terrifying before, not even when meeting other high rankers. It felt like a legendary, monstrous being was lurking nearby. Fearing for their lives, Sunwook turned to Dong-hoon. He knew Dong-hoon was a necromancer. He told him to summon his skeletons immediately so they would have at least a small chance of surviving what was coming. Dong-hoon summons 5 skeletons, using up half of his remaining energy. Although this is a significant display of his necromancer abilities, Sunwook shows no sign of being impressed. Instead, he senses an incredibly powerful presence ahead and tells Dong-hoon to continue toward an open area. He believes there are several powerful beings nearby, though he cannot tell whether they are monsters or another group of hunters until they get closer. As they move deeper into the dungeon, the atmosphere becomes overwhelmingly oppressive. The pressure is so intense that Dong-hoon struggles to keep his eyes open or even stand properly. One of his mage skeletons notices his condition and casts an air shield to protect him. However, The immense pressure destroys the shield the instant it appears, causing Dong-hoon to cough up blood. Realizing that ordinary skills are useless against such overwhelming power, Dong-hoon scolds the skeleton, but continues moving with the support of his summoned undead. Meanwhile, Sunwook walks far ahead with little difficulty, highlighting the enormous gap in their strength. Dong-hoon begins to understand that this newly discovered dungeon is far more dangerous than anyone expected. Even an experienced A-rank hunter like Sunwook appears cautious, making Dong-hoon realize just how deadly the situation is. His dream of becoming a powerful ranker suddenly feels meaningless if he cannot survive this dungeon first. After enduring the crushing pressure, Dong-hoon receives a system notification announcing that he has entered a new stage. The notification identifies the boss as an elderly man with white hair, whose deep resentment is so intense that frost has formed in his hair. The system states that defeating this mysterious old man is the requirement for clearing the stage. Inside the chamber, Dong-hoon and Sunwook encounter a group of exhausted hunters who are relieved to see them. Mistaking them for reinforcements, the survivors immediately ask for help. They recognize Sunwook's purple badge as proof that he is an A-rank hunter and also notice Dong-hoon's skeleton summons, confirming he is a necromancer. Sunwook calmly distributes emergency food supplies while Dong-hoon hands out food and water, realizing that he could easily end up trapped like these hunters if he makes a single mistake. One of the survivors, a B-rank hunter and the strongest among the remaining group, explains what happened. He describes the dungeon as a living nightmare, unlike anything he has encountered before. There is no exit, and every path eventually loops back to the same chamber, making escape impossible. Since they could not leave, the only option was to challenge the boss waiting beyond the door. The B-rank hunter explains that the old man is unbelievably powerful. Regardless of a challenger's rank, everyone is effortlessly defeated. However, instead of killing those who challenge him, the old man simply overpowers them, declares that they are not fit, and throws them back outside. None of the survivors understand what kind of test he is conducting, or what qualifies someone to pass it. Although the survivors remain hopeful that an A-rank hunter like Sunwook can succeed where they failed, Dong-hoon is disturbed by another shocking revelation: the dungeon boss is a human rather than a monster. Since the world's transformation, no one has ever encountered a human serving as a dungeon boss. Unsure of what this means, Dong-hoon realizes that the only way to uncover the truth and find a way out is to confront the mysterious old man and complete whatever trial awaits them.